This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Last week, we were talking about Daniel finding himself in the palace with the order of Nebuchadnezzar, the king, the evil king, who decided to take Daniel and his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, into the palace, and he commanded Ashpenaz to tell the chef, the head chef, that he must go ahead and feed all the young people, which included Jews and also non-Jews, from the food that the king gets. It has to be the food, the exact food that the king gets is what you have to serve to Hananiah, Daniel, Mishael, and Azariah. So Daniel was stuck in a situation. On the one hand, he has to listen to the king. It's dangerous to not. On the other hand, he has to listen to the king of all kings, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we know in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar, the food that existed in the palace was not kasher. No way. First of all, you had meat that wasn't slaughtered properly. You had sometimes animals that weren't even kasher at all. And sometimes you had other foods, like for example, they would mix in the palace of the king, they would have mixed meat and milk.
Ew.
How do we know that they had meat and mix? Because the Zohar says that they used to have from the patbag hamelech. Not now. From the patbag means, the pat means the bread. Bet gimel, bag is in reference to basar gvina, which means meat and cheese. And this was combined together. So not only did you have forbidden foods, not only did you have foods that weren't slaughtered properly, you also had foods that were mixed, meat and milk. Even if both items were kasher, if they're mixed together, that makes it not kasher. So the whole area, the whole kitchen of the king was tarif. So Daniel, on the one hand, he was stuck. What is he going to tell the king? I'm not going to eat from the food? The king, in 2 seconds, he has no problem killing anybody that he doesn't think is listening to him. So now Daniel really has a serious question. Should he give up his life for kasher? So what is the rule? What does the Torah tell us when a person has to give up his life for the mitzvot and when he doesn't have to give up his life? In truth, the Rambam writes, there's only 3 sins that a person gives up his life for. Does anybody know what they are?
Oh, I only know.
Yeah, Sivan? Avodah Zarah is one of them, which means idol worship is something a person has to give up his life for.
And marry someone who's already married.
Marrying someone who's already married, which is forbidden relationships, yes?
Or a non-Jewish lady.
Right? No, not necessarily. That's a discussion in the poskim. But yes, forbidden relationships. Let's stick with that. And number 3?
Me? I think eating.
No. No. Yeah, Benjamin? Yes, murder. That's the 3rd one. Murder is also one of the 3 cardinal sins that a person has to go ahead and give up his life for. One of them is not eating not kasher, which means that one is allowed to and required. If a doctor says to somebody who is sick and he's going to die if he doesn't find the medicine, he says you have to eat this, and look, it doesn't have an OU, it's not kasher, but you have to eat this to survive. We wouldn't just tell him to eat it, we would say it's a mitzvah. He has to eat it because he has to preserve his life. So on the one hand, Daniel, he wants to follow the Torah, but he also doesn't want to eat not kasher. Now, in truth, there's a disagreement amongst the authorities. The Rambam and the Tosfot have a mahloket, they have a disagreement whether in a case where a person doesn't have to give up his life, is he allowed to give up his life? Is he allowed to say, I'm going to be extra strict, and even for something that's not required to give up my life, I want to give up my life for? So it's disagreement. The Rambam says if he gives up his life, it's like he committed suicide. Yeah, you're not allowed to give up your life. So why are you giving up your life? The Rambam holds it's very serious, you can't do it. The Tosfot holds you're allowed to. You're allowed to sacrifice your life for any mitzvah, even though the Torah doesn't require you to do it. So that's interesting. That's a different case than the health. In the health factor, no one says that you're allowed to give up your life in that case. But if somebody is going and threatening a person's life, not that he's not healthy and he's not taking care of himself, but there's a threat to his life, and he wants to sacrifice his life and do Kiddush Hashem and sanctify the name of God, according to the Tosafot, he's allowed to do that. Even the Rambam, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, agrees when you're talking about somebody on the stature of Daniel, who was the leader of the generation, he was allowed to sacrifice his life in order to show and lead Am Yisrael the importance of preserving the Torah and the mitzvot. So he was an exceptional case, and it comes out that really Daniel was allowed to sacrifice his life because he was looked upon as the leader of the generation and everybody respected him, so this would elevate the whole status of Am Yisrael at the time. But and more than just that he was allowed to do it, it's so important because the Torah teaches us what it means to have food that's kasher. Sometimes we don't realize, we think kasher, not kasher, it has a symbol, it doesn't have a symbol. I wait 6 hours, I don't wait 6 hours. Why does it make so much of a difference? Why does it matter what food I eat? Why can't I eat what every goy eats? And the Torah teaches us that it's so important. It's so important to preserve every Isul, because in the language of the Torah it says V'nishmartem mikol davar ra. You have to be careful in anything that is prohibited, because if you don't, v'nitmetem bam, you will become contaminated with them. And the language the Torah uses is supposed to have inside the word v'nitmetem, it's supposed to have an aleph. It's missing. The letter aleph is taken out. And the language of the spelling is v'nitamtem bam, which means a person is sealed. He's unable to think clearly. He's unable to see things clearly. When a Jew has food that's not kasher, what it does is it contaminates the person himself. And the Rabbeinu Behaye writes that why is the aleph the letter that's missing? Because aleph represents Echad, Hashem, presents HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What is missing when a person has food that's not kasher? He's missing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shekhinah, the presence of God, leaves him. The Echad leaves the person. So Daniel, he was afraid. I'm going to eat not kasher. We went into exile because of the Torah and the mitzvot that we didn't keep. And I'm going to not keep this prohibition of kasher. I can't. I must keep it. The Gemara actually says a story. The Gemara says that one time there was a philosopher that came to Rabbi Eliezer. The story is brought down in the Zohar HaKadosh. In the Zohar it says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, one time with Rabbi Eliezer, he would learn all day. He would learn the Torah, he would learn mitzvot. One time he had a conversation with a goy who was a philosopher. The philosopher says to him, you Jews, you claim you're a holy nation and that God loves you. And let me tell you the truth. Look, you guys keep Torah, you keep all these laws, 613 rules. We don't have to keep, a goy doesn't have to keep 613 mitzvot. Only we do. And yet, who's the one that looks like they're having good time? We have good time. We have celebrations. We have parties. Every weekend we go throw parties. And you are out in exile suffering. You're not even in your land. You're in exile. You're in Bavel. You're in America and all these countries that aren't your land. And here we are. We're enjoying ourselves. We have Thanksgiving. We have Halloween. We have all these holidays. Rabbi Eliezer heard what he was saying. He didn't stop him. He didn't interrupt him. Even though Rabbi Eliezer didn't agree with him, he let him finish his thought, because a Chacham, a wise man, always allows even somebody that's foolish, let him finish what he has to say. If he says something that's good, so you'll be able to respond. And if he says something foolish, so he made himself look foolish. Wait for him to finish. So Rabbi Eliezer let him continue. He says, and not only that, but you have to keep kasher. And we don't have to keep kasher. We could eat anything. If there's a bug on the floor and they want to eat it, they could eat it. A goy? He's allowed to. If he wants to go ahead and have meat from any animal, he wants to eat a pig, it's mutar. He can eat a pig if he wants to eat it. He's a goy. He's not Jewish. They can eat whatever they want. And you only eat special things, only things that are kasher. I would think that you should be the ones that are strong and powerful and have all the muscles because you keep your healthy and your diet. And we who eat everything in the world, we should be weak. But it's the opposite. He says to Rabbi Eliezer, we're the ones that are strong and mighty, and you're the ones that have the weak people walking around. They're not so strong. They don't know all these things. So what do? What does Rabbi Eliezer do? Rabbi Eliezer was angered by this goy and the way he spoke. After he finished what he had to say, Rabbi Eliezer looked at him. He looked at him with the stare of the Torah, of the presence of God. This person was a big guy. He was a philosopher, workout, gym. All of a sudden, he collapsed on the floor and he died on the spot. On the spot. Just from the looking of Rabbi Eliezer, because Rabbi Eliezer was angry at the way he spoke about Am Yisrael and about God, he turned him into a pile of bones. Right there. After he finished, says that Rabbi Eliezer turned to his students and responded to what the goy said. But this is how you deal with goyim. You don't get into an argument with them. Because if you start arguing with them, they're going to say things that are silly. And then you have to answer to silly things, which is beneath Am Yisrael to do. So what? He didn't respond to him. He talked to the students, and he told the students, this person, what he was arguing, he doesn't understand who we are. Am Yisrael, the nation of Israel, is like the heart in the body of a person. When you have a heart, is there any other part of the body? Is the arm, for example, the finger, the leg, is that more important than the heart? No. Because the heart allows every muscle to function. If the heart didn't function, it wouldn't be just one thing not functioning. It would be everything doesn't function. If a finger doesn't move, you still have another 9. It's not a big deal. If the nose doesn't know how to smell, it can't smell, okay, but at least I could see. If the heart is not functioning, then nothing can function. Am Yisrael is the heart. The heart, it's so delicate, it's so precious, that it needs to get special food. If you give food that's not good, so all the other limbs will be fine, but the heart is, because of its sensitivity, will be affected by it. And then it will affect every other limb in the body. So the heart is the most sensitive. When a person's not feeling well, what happens? It's the heart that gets hurt the most. So Am Yisrael has to eat kasher because we are the central element of the world. And if we don't keep the laws, and we don't keep the rules, and we don't keep the Torah, then the whole world doesn't have function, doesn't have purpose. And therefore Am Yisrael is extremely special. It's the exact opposite. What the goy thinks is a negative is exactly the positive. The only reason he is able to go and have what he considers to be a good time is because Am Yisrael is here in the world, is teaching the Torah, is learning the Torah, is keeping the diet of kasher, and all of these things make it possible for the world to even exist. And that's what Rabbi Eliezer was telling them. Now, Daniel, at his time, aside from the Torah prohibitions that existed, which is kasher, not kasher, basar v'chalav, meat and milk, there were also other prohibitions that Daniel himself put in place that didn't exist. Because Am Yisrael lived in Eretz Yisrael. How many non-Jews lived in Eretz Yisrael? 0. There were no non-Jews in Eretz Yisrael. All the non-Jews lived in other areas, in other villages, in other communities. But Jews, until the destruction of Beit HaMikdash, they only lived with Jews. They lived in communities with only Am Yisrael. What happened when they were exiled is now they live amongst the Goyim. And there's a danger. When you live amongst the non-Jews, you have assimilation. You have becoming friends. You become buddies. And then you start going ahead and developing a closeness. And then when the kids get older, they want to get married. They want to marry non-Jews and all of these terrible things. So what did Daniel do? He created what is called separation. He wanted there to be a barrier between Am Yisrael and the rest of the nations. Because now we're in exile. We have to be more careful. Not less careful, more careful. So Daniel introduced new prohibitions that up until his time didn't exist. Even when all the food is kasher, everything is kasher, something could still be prohibited to be eaten. What's an example? Let's say you have bread. And the bread was not made by a Jew. It was made by a non-Jew. And the Jew did not do anything to involve himself in the making of the bread. That bread is called pat akum. Bread of a goy is prohibited for a Jew to eat. Daniel decreed that prohibition. He created the prohibition of bread that was made by a non-Jew, that a Jew didn't involve himself. Today, what is done in most kashrut, most stores, restaurants, when they give approval, they have the Jew turn on the fire. The Jew turns on the fire. Let's say you go to a pizza shop where the non-Jew makes the pizza. So the Jew turns on the fire in the morning. That means he already involved himself. Because without him there would be no fire, there would be no pizza. So now when it's put into the oven, although the goy is, a lot of time it's non-Jews that put it into the oven, but the Jew is the one that's making it kasher, because he was involved in the work. So that's one example that he prohibited. He prohibited the bread of the non-Jew. Why? Because one day you'll have your neighbor, he's not Jewish, you'll say, come to my party. You say, you know what? I want to come to his party. Let me first find out if everything is kasher. So he says, no, I got only kasher. Everything OU, everything he shows you, like all the ingredients, everything is good. So you say, okay, so let me go to the party. The Torah doesn't say it's prohibited. But the Chachamim say, no good. Because he's going to make the food, he's going to make the bread, he's going to make a barbecue. Let's say he buys meat that's kasher, and he cooks the meat. No, that's called bishul goy. Bishul goy, the cooking of a non-Jew, is prohibited. So Daniel was the one that declared this. He was the one that prohibited it. Yeah, Gamliel.
Is it because all the rest of the stuff he cooks isn't kosher?
No, even if everything was kasher. Akiva, you have a question?
What are we talking about?
Talking about Daniel. Daniel and the prohibitions he created. What's your name? Meir, what's your question?
What if the guy? Is it because the guy couldn't use it for a desire?
No, not because of that. It's because of the relationship. You don't want to develop too close of a relationship with the non-Jews. That it's too friendly basis, that's a problem. That's something that might lead to marriage. And therefore, Chachamim were concerned about that eventuality. 1 second, let's continue. You ask a question, a few more minutes. Not only this, Daniel also prohibited the wine that was touched by a non-Jew. And oil that was either touched or made by a non-Jew. Even oil, Daniel prohibited in his time. So everything, in order to create a very clear difference between Am Yisrael and the non-Jew, and that the Jews should not mix in and involve themselves too much. Some things are good. Sometimes you have a person comes into the store and he's not Jewish. So you say, hello, how are you doing? You introduce him, you go, that's fine. There's nothing prohibited. But to have a meal is something that develops a relationship. And that's more serious than just having a business transaction, or somebody coming over to your house is different than you going over to their house. Now, if you think about it, in truth, you might ask a question. You're telling me Daniel was the one that prohibited the wine? But many years earlier, who came first? Daniel or Moshe Rabbeinu? Who came first? Rivka, who came first? Moshe Rabbeinu came first, right? Moshe Rabbeinu was way before Daniel. What happened in the times of Moshe? There was a story. Moshe Rabbeinu, when they were about to go into Eretz Yisrael, to the land, and they were in the desert. So they were right by the nation of Moab and the nation of Midian. These two nations joined forces. They got very bad advice from Bil'am. Bil'am, he tried whatever he could to damage Am Yisrael. If there was any way to damage them, he tried it. It didn't work. God did not allow him to attack, not with the sword and not with the mouth. He could not harm Am Yisrael. He decided the only way to harm Am Yisrael is to get them to harm themselves. If I convince them to do averot, to do sins, then I will defeat them. Bil'am was smart. He realized that's the only way to defeat Am Yisrael. The enemies of Am Yisrael understand this. There was a man who was the leader of Egypt. His name was Nasser. He was the one that instigated the 6-day war, where all the Arab nations that surrounded Eretz Yisrael in 1967 decided to attack together. They joined forces. Now you can imagine a small little state with the ocean. You have the Mediterranean Sea, and you have a nation, small, tiny. It wasn't even what it is today. It was a small slither of land with Jordan, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq joined forces. Saudi Arabia was part of it. Well, everybody was involved in one way or another from the Arab world to attack one small nation. What are the chances of such a nation surviving? Now they attacked, and not only did they get defeated, they got defeated in 6 days. There wasn't a war that ended that quickly in the history of wars. 6 days, a battle takes 6 days. A war takes months, years sometimes. You have wars that last for years. America just fought a war for 20 years. They were in Afghanistan fighting a war. So sometimes you could be in a country for a long time fighting wars. 6 days defeat. How did that happen? They asked Nasser afterwards. He said to defeat Am Yisrael is impossible. You cannot defeat them. You have to wait until they defeat themselves. Smart man. He understood that what happens is all of a sudden we have peace. Once we have peace, we say, okay, let's get comfortable. Let's go ahead. We don't have to come to Bet HaKnesset. We don't have to come to Shiurim. We'll just go watch Chas v'Shalom television. We'll watch movies on the phone. We'll play games. And then, all of a sudden, God says, wait a second. Up until now, they were praying to me. They were learning my Torah. And I protected them. But now they're doing sins. Why should I protect them? Am Yisrael. And then we start fighting with each other, which is the worst thing we could do. We start arguing. And we start saying, no, you're not good. No, you're not good. Everybody's not good. He's not religious enough for me, and I'm not religious enough for him, and nobody eats by anybody's houses, and everybody's at war with each other. God says they're already at war. So what's the difference if they go ahead and they have another war? So then we defeat ourselves. And this is what even the nations understand about Am Yisrael. So Bil'am, he gave an advice to Barak. He told him, look, to defeat this nation with a war, forget about it. You have to get them to sin. So what did they do? They said, sin, that we can handle. We can cause them to sin. How do you cause someone to sin? You become his friend. So they knew, I'll become friends with him. And I guess slowly but surely, I'll be able to convince him to do things. Like sometimes, why is it that parents sometimes tell us that you shouldn't be friends with such a person, with this man, with this child, with this... Why? Because they don't like us? No. Because they know that sometimes friends, they could have a bad influence. And they could tell you to do things that you're a good kid. You don't want to do bad things. You want to respect the teachers. You want to respect the Rabbanim. But they come and they tell you, no, you got to go ahead and we got to do this. Start making balagan. Start making problems. So they can have an influence, and that's bad. Sometimes because you're friendly with them, you'll do things that are bad that you wouldn't have otherwise done. Shiv. So the same thing is true. When we become too friendly with non-Jews, they start telling us, why do you have to keep mitzvot? Why do you have to keep the Torah? Do it this way. There's better ways to go ahead and to live be a good person. You could be a good person without the Torah, right? That's what some people say. So all of these things, they take us away from the Torah. What did Balak do? He put women in front of the stores. Now the women he put in the front were old women. They weren't pretty. So the Jews, they saw stores, sales, Black Friday. They said, "Yalla, okay, it's a good price." They went ahead and they purchased the sales, right? They started purchasing things from the stores. They started negotiating. The women in the stores themselves were much more beautiful. So this has got more friendly relationship, more of a talking, and you know how Jews, we like to negotiate. Everything we do has to be a negotiation. No, you said $15? No, $12. Why 12? It's already a sale. It usually costs 20. No, because they need to negotiate. Right? So now $12. So they said, okay, but look, before we sell to you, before anything, here, take a cup of wine. Wine, I don't know. Alright, you know what? It's a good wine, I'll drink a little bit. He likes the wine, he drank another cup. What happens when a person drinks too much wine? He becomes crazy. Becomes drunk. He doesn't know what he's doing anymore. And then they said, bow down to avodah zarah, bow down to idols. They bowed down to the idols. They did the worst sins. Why? Because they drank the wine, and once they got them to drink the wine, it was over. Then you could do whatever you want with them. Then you could convince them to do any sin. And then what happened was, they were right. 1 second, put your hands down. Put your hands down afterwards. And then what happened was, because they did such a terrible sin of worshipping idols, God punished the whole nation. 24,000 people died. More than the sin of Hita Eged. More people died. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen saw this. He saw that more people were dying. There were going to be more than 24,000 people die. He went and he made a very big sacrifice. He killed the Resha'a, the evil Goya, and he brought the end to the plague. But that wasn't it. He didn't stop there. He said, I started the mitzvah, I'm going to end it. Pinchas got up. He brought the 70 Rabbanim, 70 Sanhedrin, the biggest sages of the generation. He said, from now on, there is going to be a prohibition against the wine of the non-Jews. The wine of the non-Jews, even if it's kasher, it's from grapes, just like any other grapes. You cannot drink it. If a goy gave it to you, if a goy touched it, you can't drink it. Why did he declare this? Because he saw how much damage it did to Am Yisrael. 24,000 people died. Today, probably more damage happened than what happened in this time. Because of wine and because of the closeness of relationship. How many Jews were lost? 24,000? That would be good compared to what we've lost in Am Yisrael, because of these types of things that were neglected, that we didn't care for the prohibitions that were written in the Torah and what the Chachamim taught us. Because of that, we lost so many Jews. So many Jews. So Pinchas already decreed a prohibition. Moshe Rabbeinu accepted the prohibition. This prohibition became law. If that's the case, why do we need Daniel to come and prohibit what Moshe Rabbeinu already prohibited? Why do we need him to repeat the prohibition? Right? It's a good question. The rule is like this. Any prohibition that at the time of its institution was not accepted by the majority of the nation of Am Yisrael, was not followed by Am Yisrael, is null and void. In Moshe Rabbeinu's time, although that many people died, but they quickly forgot. They forgot about the danger that was involved, and they went back into, but why? We're not going to do it. We learned our lesson. We know what we're doing. We'll only drink a little bit. They didn't accept. It was too difficult for them to accept such a prohibition, and therefore it never became entrenched. Once that was the case, although Pinchas declared it, it was null and void. According to halakha, if the majority of Jews do not accept the decree, it becomes null and void. Daniel, he saw that there was a need to re-establish the decree. He brought it back. And in his generation, he had hopes that the Jews would keep it. But the truth of the matter is, even in his generation, he decreed it, and it wasn't accepted. The majority of Am Yisrael still had too difficult of a time keeping the prohibitions. So it became null and void. The prohibitions did not take effect. Even in Daniel's times, it took until Hillel and Shammai, many years later. Hillel and Shammai were about 300 years after Daniel. And they came along, and they saw how much damage was done since the time of Daniel till their time. And they saw that Beit HaMikdash was imminently going to be destroyed, and the Jews would be scattered all over the world. And it would be even greater danger for Am Yisrael. And they decreed it, And at that time, Am Yisrael was ready to accept. At that point, where they saw how much damage was already caused, then all the Jews accepted the decree. The decree of the wine became law. The decree of the bread became law. And the decree of the cooking became law. The only one that Hillel and Shammai did not uphold was the decree of the oil, because they said that's beyond the ability for the average Jew to keep, and they felt that the necessity wasn't as great once you prohibited the other things, and you wouldn't need much of a prohibition on the oil, and they let that one as mutar. They left it as permitted. But the other ones were indeed prohibited by the Beit Din. So now we come back to Daniel. Daniel realizes he has no choice. He has to confront somebody in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. Now he's thinking to himself, what's the best way to do this where I do not have to eat things that are not kasher? First of all, what food can I eat? If you prohibit the wine, you prohibit the meat, you prohibit everything, what food can I eat? So what do you say? Yeah.
Jewish people eat kosher food?
Yeah, but which food? He's in the palace of Nebuchadnezzar. He's not in his own kitchen. He can't go ahead and decide. Yeah, Binyamin.
Fruits and vegetables.
So fruits and vegetables is an option. And indeed, what he did like this. He said, look, I have to be very careful. If they see that I start losing weight because I'm not eating what everybody else is eating, right? Meat, usually, how many people here eat meat? Right? Everybody eats meat?
I like meat.
Okay, good. Our parents tell us we should eat meat. Why? Because people that don't eat meat, they don't have the proteins, and then they don't develop. A lot of times they remain short. It's very important to eat meat. I know people that from a young age they said, no, I don't want to have meat, and then they became very short. In order to grow properly and to develop and to be strong, you have to have meat. It's important. It's part of the diet of a person. So Daniel, he came over to the chef, and he told them, just cut out the meat, the wine. He said, I'm afraid to do this. If I go ahead and I remove the meat, you're going to lose weight. Nebuchadnezzar is going to see you. He's going to say, didn't I command that you should eat? Who is he going to look at? He's going to look at me, the chef. He's going to say, I commanded you. Kill him. And then my life is going to be at risk. I can't grant your wish, Daniel. I want to help you, but I don't want to risk my life. So it's thank you, but no thank you. I can't do this. Now, it was interesting because the Goy acted with respect to Daniel. Usually, in these types of circumstances, Goyim would just make fun of the person and you would banish him. But the truth of the matter is, Daniel was very special. It says that Daniel had what is called hen. Hen, does anybody here know what hen means? Who knows what hen means? Yeah, Jonathan. Huh? Favor, good. Grace. Grace means, and favor is also true. You're saying is also true. There was a certain love that everybody had for Daniel. Everybody loved Daniel. And you have to ask yourself, why is it that Daniel was so loved? Now, on the one reason you could say is that every single day, if there is a Kohen, anybody here a Kohen? You're not Kohen. I know you're not a Kohen. No Kohanim here? A Kohen, what happens in the morning tefillah if you're a Kohen? Every day, not just Monday, Thursday.
You give everyone a blessing.
That's right. Not really. He is the facilitator. He doesn't give the bracha. Kadosh Baruch Hu gives the bracha. But he's the one that brings it down into the world. The Kohen brings down, Va'ani avarechem, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I give the blessing. But the Kohen is the one that's there to facilitate, to bring the bracha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in the bracha we say, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. What's that word? V'chuneka hen. That's us saying the bracha that God gives us is that we should have grace. Am Yisrael has grace automatically in the eyes of the Gentiles. They look at us favorably. Why? Because we have Birkat Kohanim. The blessing of the Kohanim itself gives us some level. But why is it that Daniel has even more than the average Jew in Am Yisrael? And Daniel wasn't the only one though. This week's parasha talks about Yosef HaTzadik. It says by Yosef, Vayiten hino be'enei tzar bet hasohar. Yosef found favor in the eyes of the prison holders. Why did Yosef find hin? What did Yosef do that was special that everybody liked Yosef? Who here doesn't want to be liked? Everybody wants to be liked. Don't you want to be liked like Yosef was liked, like Daniel was liked? There was a third person that the Torah says. Third person, the Torah says explicitly that they were hin. Who? Very good. It says by Esther, Vatehi Esther noset hin be'enei kol ro'ea. She found favor when she came to the palace. Everybody liked her. Everybody wanted to help her. Everyone wanted to do favors for her. There was something about her. So you say to yourself, what is it about Yosef, about Daniel, and about Esther that they found favor in the eyes of everyone around them? Right? What do you say?
Maybe they were like friends of Kohanim?
No, not because of that. Huh? Any other ideas? What do you want to say?
They were very nice.
Not because of that. Not because of that, but it's closer. Yes. Yeah? You have a reason? No? Yeah, go ahead.
Because their crops will grow better.
No, not because of that. I'll tell you why. It's hard to figure out on your own. Shh, 1 second. The reason why these three people had chen is very simple. When they came before the goyim, most people, they automatically try to impress, to do something that everybody will like them. Daniel, Yosef, and Esther, they cared the most not about impressing Nebuchadnezzar or Paro. They cared about impressing God. That was number one. To them, I want to find favor in God's eyes. And then everybody around me. But first God. First, V'nisa hen v'chesed be'enei Elohim ve'Adam. First Elohim and then Adam. Comes along HaKadosh Baruch Hu and says like this, if you try to find favors in the eyes of the goyim, you're not going to have favor. No one's going to look at you positively. You're always going to be behind and trying to catch up to playing favor. But if you try to find favor in my eyes, then I'll give you favor in the eyes of the goyim. And that was Daniel. Daniel cared about his image to Nebuchadnezzar. He cared about his image to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Since that was the case, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him hin. Automatically, you don't lose out. If I care about making HaKadosh Baruch Hu happy, and that comes before everything else, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you grace. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you this sort of, everybody wants to help you, everybody loves you, you're the favorite kid in the class, the teacher loves you, the Rav loves you. Who doesn't want the teacher to love him, right? A lot of people, they go to class and they're trying to make the teacher call on me, I want you to smile at me. The person who finds favor in the eyes of God, the teacher automatically likes him. His parents automatically like him. His brothers and sisters automatically like him. Hin is so precious. And that's what Daniel had. So even when he spoke to the Goy, and he said, I need a favor, the Goy said, but I can't help you. But he was nice about it. He was nice to him, he respected him, he appreciated him, because he cared about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now, Daniel, we have to leave off with this, but Daniel, he went ahead and he didn't give up. Even though they told him, no, you can't have your wish, he didn't give up. He said, okay, the chef said no. But you know what? The chef doesn't bring me the food. Who brings me the food? The waiter. It's called the meltzar. The meltzar brings me the food. Let me go to him. He went over to him and he says, look, I'm asking you for a favor. Don't do this test. 10 days. Give me 10 days and see how this goes. Just feed me rice, vegetables, and fruits. That's it. Me and Hananiah, Mishael, Va'azariah. Don't give us any of the other things. If you start seeing that we're losing weight, then fine. I'll accept and I'll come back. If we're still, strong and healthy, then continue. The waiter, he was not sure, but Daniel convinced him. He said, fine, we'll try it for 10 days and we'll see what happens. Now I have a question. My question is, why did Daniel say, give us fruits and vegetables? Daniel was very high, he was royal, right? So why couldn't he ask for help? Let me do the slaughtering. Let me do the cooking. Let me be in charge of the food, and that way he could eat like everybody else. Why didn't he ask for that instead of eating rice and vegetables and all these other plants and having to rely on a miracle? Why didn't he just ask to be in charge so that he can have everything to be kasher? That's something that we have to, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week talk about. And
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.